Hey everybody, this is Mr. Moblin coming at you with another APUSH video. Today we're taking a look at topic 8.13, the environment and natural resources in the 1960s and 70s. And, remember, when we're talking about the 1960s and 1970s, set a little context. Once again, this is a time of great change. You've got the civil rights movement for African Americans, you got the feminist movement, the Latino movement, the Native American movement, you got the counterculture, the Vietnam War. There's all these forces that are happening simultaneously that are making us question our values and question what is important in a way that we hadn't seen before. And a lot of this is definitely in a liberal direction for sure. And one of those areas that you're also going to see a tremendous amount of growth in and kind of emerging as its own movement will be the environmental movement. And when we talk about the modern environmental movements, there's a lot out there at the time in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s that were pretty darn concerning that would, make sense to necessitate an environmental movement to try to save our planet, because there was a lot to worry about. And one of the, the earliest voices in trying to bring attention to the environmental needs of the planet will be Rachel Carson. Now, Carson is going to be a scientist that is going to be studying the effects of the chemical DDT, which was traditionally used as a pesticide. The idea being is you get rid of pests, you allow crop yields to increase, more people get food, yada yada yada. Except that Carson's going to find that the use of DDT is going to have a devastating effect on the food chain. Basically, it's going to be, thinning the shells of certain species of birds. That's going to be affecting what other things eat. And so basically, she's kind of showing that, the use of some of these chemicals will have devastating effects on ecosystems, and that we can't just let businesses in the name of profit use whatever kind of chemicals or materials that they want without being mindful of their environmental impact. Also, serving as an important, alarm for, what's going on is the concern about nuclear weapons. We know that with the usage of the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki at the end of World War II, we now entered into a new age where, human technology could have just, almost godlike devastating effects on human populations. And, with the U.S. showing that it not only had the technology to develop this kind of weaponry, but a willingness to use it, we know, of course, that the arms race is going to serve as a result of that. Well, as we see the Cold War and the arms race develop, of course, there's going to be increased usage of testing nuclear weapons to see if they are effective. But understand that when you are testing these weapons, when you're testing them above ground, as you will see here in this example from Bikini Atoll out in the Pacific Ocean, you're emitting lots of radiation. And you might think, oh, well, that's in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, in the middle of nowhere. It's not going to harm anybody. Well, you got to understand that this is going to have a devastating effect on the ecosystem in that part of the ocean, which then affects other ecosystems, which then does come to eventually affect us. Emitting, massive amounts of radiation needlessly is dangerous. And so we see, one of the things that will start to, be an impact of the environmental movement is a decision by the United States and other nuclear powers to ban the testing of nuclear weapons above ground. So that is going to be an important thing. Now, that doesn't mean that testing weapons is ended. They do underground testing for that. Don't ask me how that works. Ask your local, science teacher for that. But that is going to be an important achievement. But another, work that is going to be, impactful besides Carson's Silent Spring is the population bomb, which is going to be talking about, as the human population is growing. And note, over the last 200 years, it has not just grown, it has exponentially grown. Will we have the resources to be able to meet the needs of those people? And in the attempt to try to provide those resources, are we going to do irreversible damage to the environment in the process? And there were certainly some things that were going on once again that could certainly make somebody nervous in terms of what we were doing. You know, as a global society that has become industrialized, and we now use automobiles and planes for convenient transportation, that is going to require lots and lots and lots of oil to be generated from the earth. And I don't just mean in places like Oklahoma, but, you know, under the ocean, and of course the transportation of that oil. And that is going to, you know, lead to occasional tragedies, environmental tragedies, such as the Santa Barbara Bay oil spill in 1969. You know, you're talking about 200,000 gallons of oil. Let that sink in for a moment. And as that, you know, affects that, you know, coastal ecosystem, that will have devastating effects. You know, at the same time, the same year that we're seeing this, you know, horrific oil spill off the coast of California, you're also going to see the impact of, you know, technology and a willingness to use all sorts of chemicals and irresponsible, depositing of those chemicals in the case of the Cuyahoga River fire up in Cleveland. You know, literally, yes, what you are seeing there is the Cuyahoga River on fire, a river on fire because of all of the flammable, toxic chemicals that had been dumped in there over the years from local factories. So, you know, you see that, you know, there's, you know, an alarm going off saying, oh my gosh, we have got some significant environmental disasters. But probably the scariest of them all in the United States during this era would be the partial nuclear meltdown that will take place at 3 Mile Island in near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. As you can see here, 3 Mile Island is located here on the Susquehanna River. And yeah, a fire is going to lead to a partial meltdown of one of the reactors. Now, the radiation that was emitted was, you know, minimal given what had happened, but it will scare Americans in a profound way. And this partial meltdown is going to have tremendous, political effects. You will see, starting in the 1980s, decades of where you're going to see a ban on the creation of additional nuclear power plants out of fear of what could have been an even worse situation at 3 Mile Island. Now, of course, this will be underscored by the far more devastating nuclear meltdown over at the Chernobyl facility, which was in the Soviet Union at the time, today in northern Ukraine. So, you know, with all of these, you know, environmental concerns, be it through the use of pesticides, be it through oil spills, chemical spills, radiation emissions, endangered species, you know, all of these things are going to culminate in environmental activism. You are going to see, as you go through the 1960s, take a look at this stat right here. You're going to see a 600% increase in membership in environmental groups. And as you have more members, that means more money, more power to be able to hire lobbyists to try to have an impact on legislation, to try to get state legislatures to move, to get Congress to move. And so you're starting to see this movement happen that is not dissimilar from how other movements are going to be functioning, you know, like say the Latino movement or the women's movement. The use of, you know, forming interest groups, the use of lobbying, and the use of protest, and a continued focus on trying to get attention to the issue. And this is going to inspire the first Earth Day in 1970. You know, a national, now it's not a holiday technically, but it is a day that has now become a day annually to focus in on environmental concerns and think about, you know, what kinds of policies need to be created to address these continuing issues. Now, of course, a lot of Earth Day focus and a lot of environmental issues focus in on the issue of climate change. But note, you know, Earth Day even predates the concerns that we have today about climate change. So understand that, you know, there's lots to be fearful about during this time regarding the environment, but we are seeing folks becoming active through the writing, through the forming of interest groups, through lobbying, through protests, through media awareness. You're starting to get something going. And in the next video, we're going to take a look at some of the results of that action. You know, taking what is now a movement and now turning it into actual policy. We'll see you next time.